I've learned that the entrepreneurial journey is not about failures. It's about learning and how fast you can learn and applying the insights from those experiences to leading to success.
Welcome to Multifamily Insights. I'm your host, John Casman, and I want to thank you for joining us for another great episode. Listen, if you're enjoying this show, do me one quick favor, leave us that rating and review. We want to hear what you love about the show, what's working for you, but also give us any feedback on anything that can help you with your investing goals. And if you haven't done so already, make sure you hit that subscribe button so you don't miss an episode. Now, we've got a great show today. We're going to be talking to Jason Brown. The real estate landscape is changing, and you need to be prepared to take advantage of the emerging opportunities. That's why you should join me and other top real estate investors for the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit, May 6th and 7th in Chicago. Now, you want to build the connections and partnerships that will help you scale your portfolio. Guest speakers include Jay Papasan, author of the #1 best-selling book, The One Thing; Ray Higdon, network marketing expert and author of Freakishly Effective Leadership for Network Marketers; and Tarl Yarber, Bigger Pockets contributor and the CEO of Fixated Real Estate. Now, join us for the Midwest Real Estate Networking Summit on May 6th and 7th in Chicago. Tickets are available right now at MidwestRESummit.com. Use promo code PODCAST to save on your ticket today. Again, go to MidwestRESummit.com and use promo code PODCAST to save on your ticket. Jason Brown is the founder and managing partner of PGP Advisory, a business brokerage and mergers and acquisitions advisory firm based in San Antonio, Texas. Now, he is an experienced business leader, M&A transaction professional, and entrepreneur with over 20 years of expert knowledge that he uses to help his current and future business owners successfully navigate the business sale process. Let's welcome to the show, Jason Brown.
John, it is an absolute pleasure to be here. Thanks for having me. Look forward to a great conversation today.
Absolutely. Hey, listen, I went over your bio at a very high level, right? Just a little bit of information. Take 2 minutes and fill in some of those gaps in your background.
Absolutely. So I'm a corporate guy, and I had entrepreneurial goals from high school, but didn't know where that was how it was gonna materialize. So I went the corporate path, engineering degree, worked in corporate America for 10 years. Lots of different types of work. Went back and got my MBA, and ironically enough, it was family situation that pushed me into the entrepreneurial pathway. So dual careers, young kids, and the structure of corporate didn't work anymore, right? And so, but I've always been ownership minded and had some experience in corporate working mergers and acquisitions. And so took that experience and that skill set and said, well, let me see what I can do for regular people, quote unquote. And so started the practice 7 or 8 years ago as a traditional management consulting firm and evolved it into an M&A advisory over the past several years, where we're really focused on creating maximum value for our clients through the sale of their business. Also a real estate agent here in Texas, as well as in the state of Georgia. And so play in deals that are not only pure business, but also have real estate components to them as well. So excited about sharing some of that knowledge and background and insights with the audience today.
No, appreciate you sharing that, right? So you talked about, one, wanting to be an entrepreneur, but kind of taking that traditional background. I think that's familiar to a lot of people, right? Starting out, you don't have the resources necessary to be the great entrepreneur. And if you feel that pressure to be successful, then, going to college, getting that degree, getting a good job makes sense, right? And I think that's completely fine for people to go that pathway. And you mentioned your family situation kind of push you into entrepreneurship a little bit. So
Yeah.
let's talk about kind of the M&A space because,
Sure.
it's a term people are maybe somewhat familiar with. Maybe people don't understand it completely, but what exactly is mergers and acquisitions? And then what is it that your firm does in that process to help business owners?
Yeah. So, and we'll keep this conversation to uh, Main Street and lower middle market. So say businesses that are under $50 million, right? So it looks differently when we get up above $50 million, $100 million, larger deals, right? But for this space, it really is an enabler for strategy, right? So it's what do you do to either A, grow your business, or B, exit your business, right? And so from the vantage point of somebody who's sitting in the seat as a business owner, M&A is a way that you exit. So most people who own a business have, especially in that segment of the market, most of their personal wealth is tied up in the business. And so the question becomes, how do you get liquid, right? So business is a very illiquid asset, a lot of personal investment put into it, a lot of financial investment put into it. And so M&A is a way for a business owner to become liquid, to be able to enjoy the spoils of all of the investment over the years. And so that's a part of what I do, is to figure out how do we unlock the value. And there's a process, there's things that a business owner can do to prepare to make sure that they capture that value. There's also things that business owners do at times that limit their ability to actually exit successfully and turn the value of that business asset into cash that they can use to live the lifestyle that they want to use post business. It's also a way to grow. And so there are certain business owners that are at a stage of the business that are, they have the option to grow organically. So you can invest and try to get more customers and try to expand product lines. And there's another tool that you have in your toolkit, which is to go out and acquire another business. And that is a quicker way to grow, to bring in capabilities, to position your business to be bigger. Because similar to real estate, it's what's the value add that you can do to your business that's going to position it to be more valuable down the line, right? And so you're trying to either get more cash flow in the short term, or build an asset that's able to generate cash flow that's going to be valuable for somebody else. That's what drives your exit value, is really the ability of the asset to generate cash flow, right? And I think it's similar in real estate. It's similar from an investment perspective. It's similar in business. And M&A is a tool that we use to either, again, get liquid, be to help grow the business, position it for a bigger exit down the line.
No, I appreciate you sharing that explanation, right? So really having two main objectives. One is either to get liquid or to be able to scale and grow the business. And then the other is to maybe have a potential exit there, and looking at partnerships or different ways of making that happen. If I'm listening to this, I'm thinking about the real estate investor who maybe doesn't understand why this may be relevant to them or what they're trying to accomplish. So why is this relevant for real estate investors, or what value could they get out of understanding more about the M&A space?
Absolutely. So I'm working on a deal right now, John, and so I believe examples help, where a lot of businesses, especially as you get bigger, real estate becomes a strategic asset within the business and can be even more valuable than the business itself. And the combination of the two can be huge. So in multifamily, you've got rent, right? And so rent is your income stream, and there are things you can do to help drive the rent up. When you look at a business, you've got a lot more tools in your toolkit that you can use to drive cash flow up. So if you're looking at an investment, and again, let's look at something that's substantive. So say $5 to $10 million, where you have real estate there, and you have a business that has a manager in place, and that business is generating some amount of cash flow. You can get favorable terms, and we can kind of talk through what the financing of that looks like. But the ability to generate and increase the cash flow that you have off of a business, I'd argue you've got a lot more levers available to you. And again, if you have a manager in place, it's not necessarily something where you have to go and be there every day. But particularly for folks that are in corporate America, for instance, and they have a real estate portfolio and you have a skill set. So we talked a little bit earlier about a marketing skill set, or you have an operations skill set. You can walk into a business and look at turning a business that's producing, let's say, $300,000 or $500,000 in profit, applying your skill set to that business and turning that into a $500,000 or $1 million cash flowing business. And then you're going to get additional cash flow there, as well as whatever multiple expansion you get when you go back to sell. And so, but you also have this hard asset of real estate that mitigates the risk of the overall business enterprise. So if you're looking at kind of broadly income streams and you're working right now, and that's one of your income streams, I would argue that for talented people, a lot of times that income stream is undervalued. So if you're making a couple $100,000 in your corporate job, you could go out and get a business that's generating a couple $100,000 and double that. How easy or hard is it to double your income if you're sitting in a corporate seat? How long does it take to double your income if you're sitting in a corporate seat. And as we all know, you have no asset right, associated with that. And so I think business ownership, especially when combined with real estate, is you can get the benefits of a real estate investment, the cash flow from a real estate investment, and you can take your own personal skill set, your own personal value that you create, and amplify that out in the marketplace to generate more cash and create more value for yourself.
I think for those, corporate professionals in particular, right? If this is a part of what you do on a day-to-day basis, if you're in a sales organization, if you are, in marketing and finance, you understand numbers like that, business operations in general, this could be a really unique opportunity for you to continue to expand and take the skill set and the knowledge that you've learned from your W-2 job and your career and apply it to a business that you fully own, you fully control, and continue to grow your own personal revenue through this avenue. The question or challenge I think many have is like, well, how do I get started, right? Because, one, I mean, I think the first thing is like, well, where do I even find a business, right? How do I even find an opportunity like this? Like with real estate, if you don't know anything, you can go on an MLS, right? I can go to Zillow, I can look up Redfin, and I can just see what houses are there, small apartments, and I can start there. And of course, the real estate agents and real estate brokers. Talk to us about the business landscape. Where would I begin to actually find businesses? And then I want to talk about like how we actually figure out which ones are good. But where do I even go to find these businesses?
Absolutely. So you need an investment thesis, right? It's harder if you're starting and you have no direction, right? And so my mind is I'm a strategy guy, right? And so people also hear the term business broker. I'm a business broker. And I think the difference between advisory and brokerage is really around the strategy element of it. And so helping an individual to figure out what direction to point themselves in, to take the whole world and try to boil that down to something relevant is important. And I do have those conversations with buyers. And so happy to have that conversation with someone in the audience that's trying to figure out where to start and where to go. But you need a thesis, right? You have a skill set, you have an interest area, you see something happening in the market, right? Generative AI, whatever that might be, right? There's something there that you say, okay, I can add value. I have some unique value to add. If you don't, I would say don't go there, all right? So I'm also, there's what you do, and there's also, it's really important to identify what you shouldn't do, right? And so if you have no clue or no experience in a thing, it's very risky to run down that pathway from a business perspective. So there's that angle, right? What strategically should you get into? What should you do, and what shouldn't you do? And talking to a professional who's an M&A advisor or business broker can help bring that clarity. But there's a lot of parallels in kind of what you laid out. So the MLS, quote unquote, for businesses would be something like bizbuysell.com, which is a site that I often list businesses on. So if you were just curious, you can go to BizBuySell and you can look up in your area what businesses are for sale based on a set of criteria, just to get a sense of what the landscape is and what's available out there. As you would reach out to a real estate agent, you could reach out to a business broker, M&A advisor like myself in your area, who can tell you, this is what we're seeing in the marketplace, this is what we have available. So there's some parallels there between the real estate world and the business brokerage world. There are banks typically who are also involved in this process, and I always encourage the buyers to connect with a banker. Typically, we're looking at SBA 7A loans to finance the deals. And so just to give you a sense of magnitude, I like to lay out, what are we looking at? So let's say business is generating roughly $300,000 in cash flow a year, and that business may go for roughly, say, $1 million, right? Just a little bit over a 3 times multiple. To get that financed, you can get that at an SBA loan for maybe 10% down. So you're looking at making a $100,000 investment, financing the rest $900,000 over 10 years. That's probably about $150,000 a year in payments out of the 300 cash flow, right? So you got 150 coming in off your 100K investment annually. And you got to figure out how you're going to grow it from there, right? But just to give a rough sense of the types of numbers that we're talking about. So you want to go to a bank and see, can you qualify?
Yeah. Hey, Jason, let's play. Our real estate people love numbers, right? So let's We normally don't go deep into numbers, but I think this is helpful because
Sure.
my guess is people are taking what you just said and quickly trying to compare that to what they can get
Real estate.
investing in
Yeah,
a
yeah,
real estate project, right?
absolutely.
So you mentioned if a property has or see me,
As a
300
business, yeah,
property. If a business has $300,000 in cash flow, again, cash flow. So we're talking about, the profits after all the expenses, right? Income after expenses is the cash flow here. We're saying that business may be valued around $1 million, around a 3x multiple, somewhere in that range.
beautiful. Yeah,
If you get an SBA loan, if you
yeah,
qualify, you can get 10% down. So you're going to
yeah,
bring about $100,000 to the table. You're going to get a loan
yeah,
for $900,000. And your
yeah.
payment's going to be roughly around $150,000. So you're still going to net around $150,000. That's if you do nothing else to actually grow the revenue.
Correct.
So I think, when you think about that, if you just want to go cash on cash return year one, you're going to have $150,000 off of a $100,000 investment.
Right.
It's 150% return year
Yep.
one in this
Yep.
scenario.
Yep.
Now I got way more questions. One,
Yep.
what do you got to do to qualify for this SBA loan? And are these kind of deals and structures typical, or is this something that is really atypical and really requires a unique situation?
No, and so the important question is what's the business, right?
Okay.
And what do you need to do in the business? So I've got a kennel business right now that's for sale that has a manager in place as an example. And the question becomes, what's the value add? What's the growth opportunity? And that's a bit of what I do with my owner, my client, the seller, as well as with the buyer, right? Because the question is, what can you do to improve the business? And if you can do nothing, so if you look at the business and you're like, there's nothing I can do to make this business better, then again, don't make an investment where you're paying a multiple on cash flow, even if you're getting a great return, because I think it's very difficult then to sustain. And there's competitive threats in the marketplace. There's a lot of other pieces that are going on. So I know, even from a real estate perspective, if you can't add value, right? If you look at the market and there's nothing you can do, and you're buying that asset, you're kind of crossing your fingers and maybe hoping that it appreciates just based on market forces. It's a riskier investment, and that should just be considered in the price that you pay for it. But what you look at, I mean, if you do nothing else, right? So you'll go in there and it's passive. There's a manager. It's kind of running on its own. And let's just say the area is growing and it's a service-based B2C business, right? So a kennel is in part going to be driven by, what does the housing market look like, and are there more people moving in? So if you're in a growing area, you're going to have more people with more pets, and that's going to drive an increase in the number of clients that you have at your business. So if you can just do basic marketing, you should be able to get your fair share of the market, right? Provide excellent service, make sure your team is in place. Those are the pieces that you would look at. So it really depends on the business. And do you believe that you can add value? You can continue what the previous owners have been doing and do something a bit more, or the market is just positioned such that you're going to win, right? And that is the greatest place to be, right? No competition. You're the only one there. You've got scale, and so from a business strategy perspective, you're well positioned to win in that local or national or whatever market you're competing in. Then you're like, okay, let's go, right? That $150,000 in a business asset that I'm comfortable and confident in is where you want to be positioned, versus you're in a business, say a restaurant business that has 10 other restaurants around and it's generating 300K today. My question becomes, what happens in a year when everybody starts to drop their prices? You have two more competitors moving in. Are you still going to be able to generate the same amount? So business strategy is really important. Again, that's what I like to bring to the table with my clients, is to help make sure we're answering these questions and that all those pieces are taken into consideration when you price the business. So I wanted to give that context to the numbers. It's, can I continue to generate at least 300K moving forward? And ideally, can I generate 300K plus? Because we all know there's inflationary pressures, right? There's just this competition. There's gonna, if you're in a business that's stagnant, it's just very difficult to maintain that long term. But make sure you have a business that's good, generating those types of numbers. To your point, you're looking at 150 cash on cash return year one.
Yeah, it's interesting too because I was going to ask you, how does an investor kind of leverage their real estate expertise
Yeah.
to invest in businesses. And you kind of started to explain some of that. And I'll say it a little bit differently, but what I heard you say was, you still want to buy for the in-place numbers, right? You want to buy for the cash flow. You want to buy for the, the current operations, the current returns, right? But you still want to create a value add strategy. You need to have a plan to drive value. And in that, you also have to recognize that there are threats that can hurt the current cash flow. So just because it's delivering $300,000 in cash flow this year doesn't mean it's going to deliver 300,000 next year. You might have some capex, right? If it's real estate, you have to look at the property and determine, do you need to replace the roof at any point in the next 5-10 years? How's the parking lot? How are the mechanicals doing? Are rents gonna continue to grow? Are they going to start to slow down? We have a delinquency issue, right? So you're starting to understand all those things. You have to ask those same questions in the business. Are there threats? Are there things that can hurt our products or services? What else is actually going on in the business? Is it poised to continue to grow? Or are there other things that we can do to drive value, to drive that operating income forward, and to continue to increase that revenue? So you have to look at it that way. I think you kind of protect your downside by buying a property or buying a business that is producing good cash flow out of the gate, but then you make sure you have a business plan to continue to grow that moving forward. And working with a group like yours allows you to align with someone who maybe can see things that you can't see just yet. Maybe you don't have the ability to see potential threats or know what questions to ask, particularly if you're new in the business space, right? Maybe you're great at marketing, but you've never done kind of this analysis to understand what new competitors are coming into the market. So it helps to have someone like yourself who can help look at those kind of things and provide some guidance there. For those people who are looking to get started, you talked about, well, what kind of business? Many of the listeners here are, again, maybe professionals, but we're all interested in real estate. So are there real estate specific businesses that we should be considering or thinking about?
Yeah, so I think for starters, right, if you're looking to start out in the space, it's looking for businesses that aren't very complex, right? So you don't want to go necessarily get into an aerospace manufacturing business that has lots of different kind of complexities dealing with government clients and whatnot, right? So you'd want a simpler business. And just to maybe one clarification point to make sure everybody's clear on, and I know you guys get it from a real estate perspective, you're not buying the past cash flows of the business, you're buying the future cash flows of the business, right? So the real question is, what is the business going to do next year? And you got to be comfortable that that's what you're buying, not what it did last year. So I thought you summarized that really well, John, but wanted to highlight that. But businesses even like this kennel. So if you have a manager in place, right? I look for leadership, or recommend people look for leadership in teams. And so if you're walking in and you've not bought a business before, you'd want a business that's fairly straightforward or simple to run, and one with a really good team in place. So a business that's very much dependent upon the current owner, where they do all the sales, they lead all the meetings. That's one that I recommend that buyers, if you've never done it before, give caution to. So if you haven't done it before, you want a really strong team in place. Right? You guys are all leaders in your spaces. You understand leadership and people leadership. And that can be a value add that you bring to the table. You've got a really good team. How do you really allow that team to drive the business forward under your guidance? So that's kind of one aspect to it. And then looking at industry, what industry, again, is interesting. What do you believe is going to be the outlook for that space, and look for something with real estate. So I didn't mention it. We kind of went through a numbers example with just a business. If you add real estate to it, and the real estate is worth more than 50% of the total deal value, now you're looking at, instead of a 10-year term on a loan, you're looking at maybe a 15 or a 20-year term on a loan. And so your repayment and your cash on cash return potentially goes up, right? And so if that's your sweet spot, right, as a real estate investor, then things like RV parks, where you've got real estate as a core element and a core asset in the business. You're dealing with tenants or visitors or guests, and so the model is similar to what you do today. It's more of a derivative than it is something kind of fully new. And again, where you can apply value add to, okay, how do we make this business? How do we get more people in the door? And it's closer to terms that make sense. So again, I'd encourage folks to take an inventory of what do you know, what spaces are you comfortable with, where's your experience lie, talk to a professional like myself to help kind of formulate what that investment thesis is, and then look for businesses that are fairly straightforward, strong team, where you believe they're positioned to win in the long run. And I 100% agree that having real estate as a part of that is a great criteria to add on as an extension to the existing portfolio.
No, I think those are great tips for anyone who's looking to add this to their portfolio. And just throw out two other industries that I know when I talk to real estate investors, there seems to be a lot of people growing more and more interested. One is car washes, the other is laundromats. So I know a lot of folks who are, I shouldn't say a lot, but I know a number of people who are starting to, acquire more into this space. And we started to do a little bit of a deep dive ourselves. What are your thoughts on kind of not just those particular industries, but industries like that when it comes to, finding these kind of businesses to add to your portfolio?
Yeah, and so 100% agree. And if we look at the simplicity test, right? If you have a laundromat, or especially if it's a self-service car wash, labor is pretty low, right? You're managing CapEx, managing your equipment, and a tip. So I got this from an individual that I was working with on the laundromat side. Was they've got it's capacity management, right? So you've got machines that are being used X amount of hours a day. What can you do to drive more volume through those machines? And so they got commercial contracts. So at night they would have a team come in and do commercial contracts for restaurants or hotels or whomever else, right? So third parties they would offer those services for, and they drove utilization from maybe 30% of the machines up to maybe 80%. So those machines were constantly running. And it's ROI. You're getting a much better ROI on your investment in that asset if you're using it more. And so again, that's where the creativity comes in, where it's not just buying a laundromat and letting it sit there and do what it's always done. It's what can you do to help make that asset more valuable. And then when you go to sell it, right? So you're not holding it forever, right? You're going to look to exit. You bought it when it was generating X amount, 30% capacity. Now it's at 80%. And it's generating far more income for you. It's going to get you a much better exit if and when you decide to exit it down the line. And so I think those types of opportunities are excellent. Just encourage the listeners to look creatively at any business opportunity to say, what is everybody else missing? Right. And it's the same thing in real estate. What is it that folks can't see? Where is the opportunity that's there that people are missing? But again, still a very simple model. You don't want to make it overly complicated. Again, you get a good person to help manage and oversee the day-to-day on that. And does it make sense, right? Like, again, we're all people here business people and investors who understand, okay, does this make sense or not? And let's not make it overly complicated. So I think those types of opportunities are excellent to look at. And you can use the same real estate skill set. So is the area growing? If it's not growing, or if you're in an area where you're not foreseeing population growth, then right, give that a good look to make sure that your assumptions on that make sense. But again, where you can leverage the existing experience and knowledge base that you bring to the table makes a lot of sense. And so I would definitely encourage the audience here to give careful consideration to those types of business opportunities. Now, the flip side, John, is that those are also in high demand. I had a conversation with a buyer last week. Hey, I'm looking for a car wash. Everybody's looking for a car wash and a laundromat. And so you have to be careful that you don't end up paying a premium. And again, everyone here knows how to run their numbers. But that's what ends up happening. It's supply and demand. And so it's where else can we find these businesses that are more straightforward to run, where you can add value. But the examples we talked about are a great place to start, even looking at, so you get your arms around what should I be examining, and how do I go about this process. And so hopefully that's a helpful starting point to get the listeners and the audience acclimated to where they might be able to find a nice addition to their portfolio.
And I think too, even just going to Biz Buy Sell, and we'll put a link to that in the show notes. That's a great place to start, just to see what's out there. Just to
Absolutely.
start at, just getting a general sense of what kind of businesses are for sale. I'll tell you, it's always interesting too. Like if you go on there and you see restaurants that like, oh, what, that place for sale, or maybe
Yeah.
it's an art studio that's down the street from you, whatever it is, right? Like it's very interesting to see these maybe businesses that you frequented yourself that are up for sale, and then you run through your head, well, wow, would I want to own that? And it's kind of an interesting, approach and process to look at it from that standpoint. But it's worth the step in the process just to go take a look and then start to familiarize yourself with it. I think one big question everyone has is like, how do I value these businesses? You mentioned kind of that 3x on cash flow. I know that's obviously one way to do it. In real estate, we're always looking at the cap rate, we're looking at the NOI, and we're always trying to figure what cap rate should we use, right? If it's a class A, really nice place, maybe that's going to be a lower cap rate, in the fours or something like that. If it's, more of a C class property, big value add play, that may be a much higher number, in the eights or something like that. So when you're looking at these businesses, is there any rule of thumb or any way to give somebody some direction on how they should be thinking about valuing the business they're looking to acquire?
Yeah, and that's a good call out. So similar, and again, I have these conversations with commercial real estate professionals, even as we're looking at combined businesses, is how do we evaluate, put a value on the real estate portion and the business portion, and overall, what does that look like combined? Smaller businesses are going to be valued less, right? So if we look at that in terms of class of property, right, your lower class properties will be valued less than uh, your higher class properties. And so if we're looking at, say, a business that's generating $100,000 in cash, if you were to say 2x, it's probably a reasonable starting point. Now, if all of the relationships exist with the owner, and that might be 1x, right? Uh, and it's all really a derivative of, come back from the corporate days, discounted cash flows, all of it. And, whether we're doing NOI, cap rates, it's all, what do we expect the future cash flows to be? And how do we put a value on that today? So we can do another show on that at some point. All of these various methods to get back to, we're expecting future earnings, and we're trying to predict what value we put on that today. And so, but a multiple on cash flow at the basic level is what we're really using to approximate those future cash flows. 2x on smaller businesses is where we usually start the conversation. I've got tools and lots of previous historical transactions and all of that to be able to dial in on that. And so again, if somebody's curious or interested, let's talk. I can give some guidance on that. The larger the business gets, the bigger the multiple. So the more tech enabled it is. So if you're looking at a software as a service based business, that's all technology based. People hear these large numbers, and it's because pretty low overhead, it's very scalable, and that's where you start maybe getting into a multiple on revenue, right? Where it's top line driven because your cost isn't going to go up as you add more customers, as an example. But again, start off at 3x ish when we start getting into several hundreds of thousands of dollars, say up to maybe $500,000. When you get over $1 million in cash flow a year, then we start talking bigger numbers, 4 or 5, and it more industry specific, more dependent upon team. But just as a rough kind of landscape, we're looking at 2 at the low end, 1 to 2, depending on quality of the business. When you're at 100,000, 200,000 in cash flow, $500,000 to $1 million, you start looking at 3x in cash flow as a general directional guidance. Over $1 million, then you start talking 4 or 5x in cash flow. And then again, tech it's a whole different story where the growth is crazy and you can see some crazy valuations. But I run it in the background when I represent sellers. What's the ROI? So I look at it from a buyer perspective and try to help my seller clients understand, if a buyer can make more money going out and making a passive real estate investment that's fairly low risk, why would they come out and buy your business, right? And so there has to be a return that's commensurate with the risk that you're taking on in the operation. And so that's why the returns are more attractive in a business scenario. It's to account for the fact that it is riskier than a more traditional, say, multifamily investment. But that's a general kind of framework that folks can use to get started. And then, as it becomes more, tangible, as the picture becomes clearer, not only myself, but any business broker in your area can help provide some guidance as to what specific opportunities would be valued at. I also have a valuation service. So if you ever do run into a specific scenario and you're looking for a certified appraisal on a business to get comfortable that the numbers are real and that the value is what they say it is, that's a service that we also provide here at PGP Advisory. So happy as folks get serious about looking at business opportunities to support that effort.
Jason, great information, man. I appreciate you sharing just how to evaluate these businesses. Start at a 2x, cash flow multiple once, the business is smaller, 100,000 in cash flow, maybe up to $500,000 or so. And then you can kind of scale up from there. Some businesses are going to be based on the revenue. And then obviously if it's tech or, software as a service enabled, then it's going to be a little bit of a higher valuation from there. But the fact that you are a resource to be able to help with these things is amazing. Again, if anybody wants to learn more or talk to Jason, you can shoot him an email at jason@pgpadvisory.com. Give me a failure or an apparent failure that sets you up for later success.
So I have gone through maybe 2 or 3 different business opportunities. I'm an investor too, right? So I sit in the seat that everyone here is sitting in that didn't work. And I learned from it. So I've learned that the entrepreneurial journey is not about failures. It's about learning and how fast you can learn and applying the insights from those experiences to lead into success. So I learned that you got to stay the course. It requires a level of fortitude. It requires you to keep moving forward when others maybe would quit. And that's helped me become successful in this current venture. So stay the course. When you know you're on the right pathway, keep going.
Give me a digital or mobile resource you recommend for your business.
So I have recently started using generative AI. So I would definitely recommend, I think we're early days, very early days in it. But as you're looking at ways to build in efficiencies, as you're looking in ways that you can leverage technology in potential future investments, definitely start checking out generative AI. There's lots out there. I'm using Jasper, but look at how you can become more effective and efficient in your business.
Give me the book you've recommended or gifted the most in the last year.
Good to great. Great business book on just keeping the mind sharp on business topics.
What's a daily habit that helps you stay focused on your goals?
So I'm actually in an accountability group that we meet monthly to keep ourselves accountable on goals. We do annual goal setting, and I check in on that daily.
All right, give me your #1 insight for investing in businesses.
Strategy. So it all starts from, if you have no strategy, if you're kind of shooting scattershot, it's not going to work. So definitely understand, take the time to lay out a strategy and then work to execute on that strategy.
All right, listen, you've given us a lot of great insight. We know that you are based in San Antonio right now. So give me your favorite place to grab a bite to eat.
Real Jamaica. My family's from Jamaica and it's a taste of home.
I love it, man. Listen, we got to make another trip out to San Antonio. It's been a few years since we've been there, so we'll make sure we link up with you the next time we're there. But I want to check out that spot as well, man. It'd be a fun time. Jason, you've given us a lot of great info. I want to thank you for coming on the show today. I appreciate you sharing that knowledge and wisdom on mergers and acquisitions, buying businesses, what to look for, understanding some of the numbers a little bit around buying businesses and how to evaluate them, and also how to find these deals. And again, if anybody is interested in learning more and trying to get started, reach out to Jason. His email is jason@pgpadvisory.com. Jason, I want to thank you again for being a great guest, and we look forward to staying in touch with you.
John, thank you for the opportunity. It was wonderful. Look forward to talking soon.